MYB community, thank you so much for coming back. I'm your host, Champ Ron. This is the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. This is episode 159. I'm excited about today's guest, but before we get into it, again, I want to send just a word of encouragement to all of you that are dealing with various things that you're dealing with. And, I could spend the next, half day talking about all the things that we all get into, but just know that there's opportunity out there. And if you're still here and you're still able to have your right mind and still able to get up and go, just know that you have the opportunity to turn those lemons into lemonade, so to speak. And while we're socially distant, we're not socially disregarding. And, boy, are we in an environment that's unique for many of us. This is an environment that many of us have not seen. Some older generations have seen this story before. This is a sequel to a bad movie for some, but for many of us, in some of the younger generations, some of this is a little new, and we're writing history every day. And so I hope that this podcast finds you in good spirits, as good a spirits as possible, understanding and recognizing and appreciating that the environment is what it is currently right now. And we've got many challenges, but we also have great opportunity, and shedding the light on things that are going on that hopefully can trigger action and make real change in this country. I believe that there's an awakening taking place, but we've got to continue to push, not just shedding light or giving statements to things, that we continue to push for change. What do we want? What are we demanding? And then what are we willing to work collectively to make change? And so just wanted to start out with that brief kind of introduction. But again, I'm excited, here in Memphis, Tennessee, with this gentleman, Mr. Sam O'Bryant, who is a senior director, equity and partnerships with SchoolSeed Foundation. He's also working on his doctorate here at the University of Memphis with Mighty Tiger Pride that we have here in Memphis, man. But Sam, thank you so much, man, for taking time out of your brief schedule to join us here on the Minding Your Business podcast.
Man, I'm honored to be here, man. I'm glad you presented the opportunity. I'm ready to share what I can, help who I can, and maybe open up some thought, open up some minds, and open some eyes and ears, and just see where we go from here, man.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. So, man, let's jump right in. Obviously I opened up with some thoughts, but more specifically, we've had, and again, we don't want to just limit what's going on just to the George Floyd situation, which was the murder of an unarmed black man by a white cop with other cops in the vicinity. And that was a murder that took place. And there's been other murders, just unfortunately, of black men around this country recently, and over the entire time that black people have been associated with the United States of America. Your quick thoughts, Sam, on just the environment currently, kind of what you see, and that sort of thing, and any statement that you'd like to make in regards to that. I'd love for you to share with our community.
Sure, man. So first and foremost, what happened to George Floyd is, we like you call it, is murder. It is a very unfortunate circumstance. As we learn more information about it, the things that stem from it, I think the talk is that it was over a counterfeit $20 bill that he may not have even known that it was counterfeit. And so we even before we get into the gentleman that actually murdered him, I want to pull it back and even go back to the the practice of the store that figured out that it was a counterfeit $20 bill. Did that warrant an arrest? I mean, and the thing is, I'm asking these questions because I don't know the law around a single tender note being accused of being counterfeit. So did the actions warrant an arrest? Could the store owner have just said, "Hey, this is counterfeit. I can't allow you to purchase this stuff," and just ask him to leave? I mean, there are a couple of different things when we talk about de-escalation of a situation, even before it gets to the murderous act from the gentleman that did what he did to George Floyd.
Yeah.
But when we put it in the context of, I would say of the police state, I think what we need to recognize is that policing happens within an institution of criminal justice. And criminal justice, just like any other institution in America, just like any other system in America, is riddled with systemic racism, particularly systemic racism against Black people.
Yes.
I want to be careful not to say people of color, because it's important that we're talking about this black-white binary right now when we're talking about systemic racism. It's not to dismiss what happens to Latino people or Asian Americans or Native Americans, because their stories are just as horrendous as ours. But for this conversation, I want to focus in on the black-white binary, because Black men are killed disproportionately
Yeah.
by armed law enforcement, security guards, or self-appointed vigilantes over the most trivial of things, simply for existing. We can always go back to Trayvon Martin, who was leaving a store in the neighborhood in which he lived, and he was being stalked by George Zimmerman. We can always talk
Yes.
about Tamir Rice playing in a park in the city in which he lived, and he was gunned down before the officer it was almost immediately after he exited the vehicle, he gunned down Tamir Rice. We can even talk about Breonna Taylor in this mix as well. While she's not a Black male, she is Black, and we're talking about this disproportionality of police killings with Black people. She was in her house, no knock warrant. They come in, they shoot based on false information, incorrect information. The person they were looking for had already been detained and was in custody, and she was killed. And I think her boyfriend, I can't remember which was which. Her husband, I think,
Yeah.
was arrested as well, because when someone kicks in your door, the first instinct is to defend the home. And
Exactly.
because he was defending his home, he was arrested, and while she was killed. And it was all a case of what we want to call mistaken identity, but really it was just improper practice.
Exactly.
So we're talking about, again, this black-white binary when it talks about systemic racism within criminal justice, because again of the disproportionality that Black people face when they are in contact with policemen, security guards, and self-appointed vigilantes. The incident with George Floyd, I think, shows us that racism doesn't take a break, because for many of us, really all of us, we're in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic.
Right.
There are social distancing guidelines in place. There are all these things that basically is telling us, stay 6 feet away from everybody.
Right.
Wear a mask, protect yourself, keep your distance. And so, while that occupied our minds and occupied our day, racism still finds a way to creep in and be a part of these horrendous acts with Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and
Yes.
now George Floyd. And I even think with other people in the midst of I would say the aftermath, when we talk about the protests and the insurrections and the riots, as we
Yes.
want to
Yes.
identify them properly. I don't even want to use the term riot. I want to use a proper definition. This is a rebellion of sense. These are people that are frustrated.
Yes.
And while we may not agree with all their actions, these are the reactions to murder, especially, again, murder that happens disproportionately within our community.
Yeah, and even with some of the rebellion, we understand that some of those folks are planted either
Right.
by other organizations or even by the government itself. So some of that is planted to kind of create a framework against the true protest and the true rebellion. So we do recognize that definitely as well. And you mentioned something, Sam, that's interesting from my, when you mentioned about the counterfeit $20 bill. With George Floyd in the store. Now, as someone that led banking teams for many years, we never once at any bank that I worked at called the police for someone bringing in a counterfeit bill into a bank.
Right.
Not even to a store, into a bank. Right? No one has more cameras or security other than the casino than the bank.
Right.
All right. what we did was we did what's called a suspicious activity report, or SARS, that a bank will do. So if I walk in with whether knowing or unknowing, if I want to deposit cash that includes a counterfeit bill or more, the teller's going to go through, they use the pen, they put it up to the light, whatever. If it is determined that it is counterfeit, one or two things either happen. Either the teller's gracious and gives this back and says, Mr. Brooks, there's something funny with this one. I cannot accept it. That's you getting off light. At the worst case, what would happen is teller keeps the bill, fills out a SARS or a suspicious activity report, and now you're flagged at that bank. So if you continue that practice, that just means the tellers can all pull that up in your profile and see that there's a report that you brought in a counterfeit bill. If that continues, right, you could have your account closed. You could be maybe flagged in check systems. None of what I just said, though, Sam, like you mentioned, involves calling the police to come extract someone from the bank that ends up in handcuffs, that then ends up with a knee on the back of his neck for 9 minutes. None of that happens. Okay, so I just wanted to give that context because,
like I said, those are the things that we have to unpack even going forward, because we can go out on a limb and assume that George Floyd is not the very first person in America to have used a counterfeit bill and not be fully aware that he or she was doing it.
Sure.
And we know that, like to your point, instances with fake or counterfeit money does not end always in handcuffs.
Right.
I mean, I could give a different, assumption. Like if it were like a stack of $20 bills, or we had a duffel bag full of them and it caught the attention of the store people, I guess you could go differently with that. But if it was just a single $20 bill, I think there were different actions I think that could have been taken. So to the point where you didn't have to call police and act and overreact in this manner.
Right. You're exactly right. And so, yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack there further as more information is released and that sort of thing. And then we can, kind of decipher that ourselves going forward. Sam, I do want to get into some, and I appreciate your comments on that. And we'll kind of revisit this some throughout our conversation. Of course. I do want to get some in with you. So, share with us, who Sam Bryant is. I mean, you're a very accomplished brother. You've been, here in Memphis, a top 40 under 40 award winner, to say the least. And so, tell us about your background and kind of how you got to where you are.
Man, all of my life is an accident, man. That's the best way. That's the best way to explain it, man. It's
I've never heard anybody explain their life as an accident.
Not to make this sound like too much of a job interview, when they say tell me about yourself. Right. So, just real quick, man, I was born and raised in Greenwood, Mississippi.
Okay.
And which is about 2 hours south of Memphis. But Memphis was always, especially for kids in the Delta, Mississippi Delta, Memphis was always two things. It was always the field trip destination because of the zoo and the museums that you have here.
Right.
And it was always the family vacation destination because when I was younger, there was Liberty Land, there was the Mall of Memphis,
right,
and there was I remember the ice skating rink in the Mall of Memphis. There were all these things that the Mississippi Delta didn't have that Memphis did, and of course Memphis is the next largest big city that a lot of us migrate to when we finish high school.
Right.
But after high school, man, I attended Alcorn State University, historically black college, best known Steve McNair and Donald Driver, and Medgar Evers. They're all alumni of Alcorn.
Yes.
After college, man, I worked on my master's degree for a little bit in Jackson at Jackson State University, and then my wife and I, we moved to Little Rock, Arkansas. And the reason I bring that into the discussion is because that's kind of where I cut my teeth in public service.
Okay.
I started working with Pulaski County Youth Services and kind of just wrapped my mind around and got my hands on the ability to do grant writing and just youth development programs, because we were a unique entity. For every county government, in the United States, all of them usually focus on youth programs through juvenile detention.
Yeah.
Pulaski County Youth Services was one of the few county governments in the nation, I would think, that has a youth services program that focused on after school programs and out of school programs.
Okay.
So that allowed me just this opportunity to work on just, programs for ACT prep, programs focused on summer internships, programs focused on financial literacy, and kind of be creative in that space. And one thing that I noticed, man, in doing those programs was that they were more than likely I don't say over, but they were dominantly populated by Black children.
Yeah.
And you think about Little Rock in the context. Little Rock, I think at the time was about 50, maybe 60% white, 40% everybody else, Black, Latino, Asian, Native American. So I always thought that was just kind of odd. It's like we have this program that it's open to all the taxpayers because we're a tax funded entity at county government,
Right.
but the program used to just dominate with Black enrollment and Black children. So I just kind of took notice of that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then when you're living in Little Rock, you kind of take in the fact that Central High School is around the corner. Everything that happened in 1957, they
Right.
commemorated every 10 years. So I was there when I was there in 2007. That was the 50th anniversary of it. All these things that kind of just impact, I would say, Black life,
Mm-hmm.
Blackness, and you tend to take notice of those things. So after when I did that for about 3 years. Then I worked in still with county government, worked in community services, and this is where I really started to see some stark differences. I
Yeah.
was I was in this position called I was a brownfields program administrator, and I
Okay.
always had to explain it because people are like, what is a brownfield?
Right.
And practically, I'm not trying not to get too textbook with it because I always had to do this spiel. A brownfield is a piece of real property, like real piece of land, by which the development of it is hindered because of the presence of toxic or hazardous material,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
So I was over a $4 million revolving loan fund that was used explicitly to remediate blighted property.
Yeah.
Now, here's where I see the divide. A lot of the people that I talked to, a lot of the developers that I would lend money to
Mm-hmm.
were white.
Wow.
The blighted property was always in Black
Black
communities.
communities. Right.
And so there, in so many ways, man, I didn't know it at the time. I
Mm-hmm.
was a middleman. I was an agent of gentrification, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like,
Right.
and the thing is, when you have the realization of this stuff going on, it's like, okay, what do I do to counter it?
Right.
So when I took that position, in that was the summer of 2008, and of course 2008, the bubble
Right.
burst.
Right.
Lending was just not the thing to do. So
Right.
I didn't. So I sat on top of this $4 million revolving loan fund that I'm supposed to lend out, and I'm just not getting a lot of activity.
Yeah.
So I go to my boss, and she says, like, how can you do something different? You talk about the developers that come to you are white, the communities are Black. Like, how do
Right.
you bridge these things? And again, I bring this up because this talks about kind of like this awakening of things
Mm-hmm.
related to, again, Black life and Blackness. So then I started to turn our program around and focus on how Black people could actively participate in the green economy
Yeah.
through career building or career building type of professions. Not some sort of one and done temporary work type of thing. In a sense, how could Black people literally build up their communities in which they are, which are coming under all this intense redevelopment?
Right.
And so at that point, man, we started doing just, started focusing on job training programs. We started focusing on just really the literature and the disparities that were going on. In the green economy, one of the things that often came out, people would say stuff like, well, you can buy a Prius and save money on gas. But, a Prius cost about like $34,000 at the time. And
Right.
a lot of poor folks that I was talking to couldn't buy a Prius.
Right.
So we would flip it around and we would say, well, there are windmill factories coming into Little Rock, that do the turbines for the big windmills that we see in the Midwest.
Right.
How can we put Black people in those jobs that are out of work? Because in essence, that's the job of a machinist.
Mm-hmm.
So you can transfer those skills. The Prius that you're talking about, are there factories that where are they being built? Because if black people have been building Cadillacs and Fords, I would say up north, Detroit and whatnot, surely
Right.
they could build a Prius.
Of
The
course.
same thing with, high-end washers and dryers. That's the machinist's job. Where can we kind of, filter black people into some sort of pipeline that goes into these jobs? And so
Yeah.
that kind of just sparked this awareness of blackness and black life and how it interacts with, and I would say with whiteness and the things that white people are privy to doing because of their privilege.
Sure.
Um, Fast forward, I worked a couple of years at the Clinton School of Public Service, named after President Bill Clinton.
Right.
And a lot of the work that I did there was focused on community outreach. And this is, I would say, where I kind of sharpen my racial language, if you want to say that, because the
Okay.
work that we did was specific on racial healing and equity in the American South. And
Gotcha.
so this is where, in that work, I had to be unafraid to use words like, systemic racism was like, it was the word then,
Right.
white privilege was the word. These will make people recoil then, but these were the words that we needed to use to accurately talk about what was going on. And then, to a point we had earlier, we place it in these systems.
Yes.
Systemic racism and white privilege is pervasive and all throughout criminal justice. It is pervasive and all throughout housing. It is pervasive and all throughout public education. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we start to look at these things through those lenses, we can accurately describe the things that are going on right now. So, oh man, let me see. Now, so 2012, everyone asks like, how do you get to Memphis? Man, I give all the credit to my wife.
Yeah.
My wife in Little Rock, we moved to Little Rock so she could attend law school.
Okay.
So after law school, she was a prosecutor for about 4 years, and she wanted to get back into higher education. And there was an opening at the University of Memphis School of Law, and
Yeah.
they liked her. They extended the job to her. And to be honest with you, man, I followed my wife. I was like, well, I'll find something to do when
Yeah.
I get there.
When you get there,
That
right.
was that's kind of how that worked. And
Yeah.
the opportunity with SchoolSeed kind of just unfolded as I was interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
I give a lot of credit to my boss, Vince McCaskill. During the interview process, he saw the work that I had done, and he said, "Man, the things that you'll be required to do, I'm fairly certain you can do them, but you will have the opportunity to, in essence, rewrite this job description because there's other work I think you can do."
Yeah.
And that kind of gave me this chance to put a racial equity lens into what was going on in public education.
Yeah.
And of course, during that time, this was 2012, 2013, the merger of the school districts was happening.
Right.
And we had all these different things going on. And one thing that I saw that was it was kind of peculiar,
Mm-hmm.
was that it was the elephant in the room again. It was like everyone knew there was race involved with it. There was race pervasively and throughout the system, but no one
Right.
spoke. But no one spoke on it.
Mm.
And I always
That's
thought that was
interesting.
just peculiar.
Yeah.
There would be these kind of these I guess these blips of saying stuff. But even if someone would say, well, there's racist, there would not be this expansion of explaining or expounding on how it was racist.
And this
And
is
that's just
between Memphis City schools and kind of Shelby County schools and that whole merger. That type
right,
of.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so and that's kind of where we fall short in many ways. Like we can't just say something is.
Right.
We have to explain why it is,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're trying to dismantle it and if you're trying
Right.
to correct it and trying to rebuild it anew. And so that's kind of my story. I would say while at SchoolSeed, I've been blessed to do some different things. One was a speaker series that I wanted to do that focused on Black male achievement.
Yeah.
At the time, a lot of the information that was coming out of Memphis was reported by, I would say, third party organizations. We would have other public education foundations and other public education organizations that would talk about how Black boys were being over suspended, over expelled, or they were overage for grade, but Memphis wasn't talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so while to me that seemed that we're allowing, or I wouldn't say allowing, that other people are telling our story, and we're not having the right to defend ourselves, nor are we being intentional about correcting these things.
Right.
And so that was why I wanted to do the speaker series, because I wanted to focus specifically on Black males. And and with that just came this push to do so many different things. So you may remember, I want to say, yeah, I think it was last summer, the superintendent announced that they're doing this empowering males of color, or empowering black men, black boys in the district. They have this big push called Our Boys Need Us. A lot of that was born out of conversations that I was facilitating at the district level over a number of years. And so now we're moving in these directions. But just because we're moving in those directions, that doesn't mean we've solved anything. Oppression is ever present.
Yes.
It's not going anywhere anytime soon. So that means that the work to dismantle oppression has to be ever present, and it can't go anywhere anytime soon. This is not we did this one thing this year and we're good from here on out. It
Right.
is an ongoing thing, and as different iterations of it pop up, we have to address it as they pop up. We can't sit around and wait. But that's I'll say that's my career trajectory, interjecting
Yeah.
race and equity and Blackness into all the things that I've done. Uh, I guess to round it out, like I said, I'm working on my doctorate at the University of Memphis.
Right.
And a lot of my interests, because it's research based. So my interest lies within how is school district policy crafted in a way that benefits the academic achievement of Black males. Like, in the sense, how can we be intentional
Mhm.
about correcting what we've done to the population that we have marginalized the most? Because
Yes.
we can't mince our words. Black boys are not self marginalized; they are in a system that marginalizes them, and so we have to craft policy that undoes that. And then, what are the benefits of doing it? So that's kind of where I want to go with this
Yeah.
doctorate, the things that I'm trying to pull together.
Yeah.
Um, and that's, I would say, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Just the things that interest me, the things I try to do. Personally, married, it will be 16 years this summer.
Okay.
And like yourself, man, I got 3 kids, 2 boys and a little girl.
There you go.
And I was home teaching, for a bit,
Yeah.
uh, right at the
Right.
right at the onset of this pandemic. So I understand the digital conversation that you were having as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, a lot to unpack there, Sam, but, let's go down the pathway of, kind of your work towards helping to change the culture within systems that are failing Black boys currently
Okay.
today. What, if you were to take that and kind of, put it into, say, a top 3 areas that are failing Black boys, what would you say those are? And then, what work is being done and that should be done, to correct those 2 or 3, kind of top line areas. Obviously, recognizing that there's a laundry list of areas
Right.
that could speak of that where the system again has and is failing young Black males, specifically here in this Memphis Shelby County area. But kind of what are the top areas of that? And I don't want the audience to think that Ron, Ron, that's obvious. Well, for many of us it may not be quite as obvious or as overtly blatant to some as it is to others. But just from your thought, what are those top areas, and what's being done to counter those areas that impact Black boys?
Right. So like, real quick before I get into the top areas, I think we need to recognize that public education has a history
Mm,
of doing less for Black people. That's
yeah,
just the history
of
of public
course.
education. It has a history of doing less. As it manifests itself in Memphis, what we've seen, and these are things that you can pull articles from the Commercial Appeal. You can pull stats from I think Just City, which is under the
Hmm.
leadership of Josh Spickler. Um, um, Memphis I would say as a city, as an entity, as a place, Memphis as a place
Mm-hmm.
has a very active school to prison pipeline.
Wow.
And right, so we need to talk about what creates that school to prison pipeline in Memphis. And so
Mm-hmm.
we talk about three things. Um, I would say one is the overrepresentation of Black boys in special education. Um,
Yes.
so that's one thing. That's the next that we need to focus on. Two would be the over suspending and the over expelling of Black boys from the school buildings.
Yes.
Oftentimes, um, we're looking at things that other students may have done, but Black boys are just judged more harshly or treated harshly on that. And then I would say three. I would say the almost purposeful exclusion of Black boys from gifted and talented and advanced placement courses.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here's the thing: when you do all three of those things, you are effectively damaging any positive post-secondary options for Black boys. Think
Yeah.
about it. If they're in special education, it is very hard to get into any type of college when you completed a special education curriculum, K through
Yes.
12. Very hard.
Mm-hmm.
If you are suspended too much, those are counted as absences. If you are
Right.
if you are over suspended, it is very hard to graduate. And if you don't graduate, you do not. It is well again. If you do not graduate, it is very hard to get into a post secondary opportunity.
Yes.
And lastly, if you are excluded from AP courses and gifted courses, these are the things that college recruiters actually look for
Mm-hmm.
when they're trying to when they're doing their recruiting. They want to see that you had AP math and AP science and physics and calculus and government and all that. If you are being excluded from those classes, it is very hard again for you to get into some sort of positive post-secondary environment. So if you are excluded from a positive post-secondary life, what takes the place of that? And there we go back into this school to prison pipeline. It's very active again because we're over suspending, we're over recommending for special education, and we're under recommending for gifted and AP courses. So if we're going
Yeah.
to focus on, how do we focus on this issue with Black boys and positive education opportunities? Those are the three things that we need to look at. We need to understand, like, why do these things exist? Why are we
Mm-hmm.
under recommending for gifted? Why are we over expelling? Why are we over recommending for special education? What like who are the I would say who are the adults, because this is an adult problem. Like
Yes.
who are the adults that are participating in these practices that actively injures these young boys from a positive post-secondary life, which then lends itself to a positive adult life. One thing we always have to look at is like those years between, I would say, 18 and 21.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the most formative years of our lives,
Sure.
and it's in those years, like for you, you and I, we went to college,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, I wasn't completely sure on the story. I met my wife in college, right?
Yeah. I
You
met
know,
mine too. Yeah.
right.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
these are formative years where we make key decisions about what we're going to do for the next 40 years of our lives.
Right.
So if I have just injured you and damaged you K through 12, and you exit this system at 18, and you are not able to do a positive post-secondary experience, and it's not necessarily just a 4-year degree. If I have damaged you to the point where you can't get, a vocational credential, what is there for you to do? You're right. So that is how we need to have that conversation, because it begins as an education conversation.
Yeah.
Then it carries on to be a post-secondary conversation.
Yes.
Then it becomes a workforce conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of it pieced together becomes a community conversation.
Yes.
You are effectively damaging a key component of building community when you over expel and under recommend and over recommend for those three areas that I just gave.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, I've got a personal note to that, and something that I'd like to add on to what you said, which is even if you go back to the very early parts of a Black boy's life, even pre-kindergarten, right? So entering the school system, so entering this system at, let's just say, kindergarten. I had an episode where I had a business owner who started a math, kind of tutoring, kind of holistic program, really more custom tailored. I'd love to get an introduction to him with you. He's in Denver, Colorado, and I'm researching more of his business, but he focuses in on mathematics, and he talked about on his episode the language of math and the importance of it in this whole overall conversation, and how math has the impact, not just among other subjects, but so many areas of life. But aside from that, for me personally, my mom, now I was born in 1981. Early in my school career, there was a teacher that, because I was fairly quiet, kind of to myself as a young child like that. And would draw and do some different things. And so I imagine this teacher took note of that and told my mom that I would have trouble learning, and that there was this special class that she was recommending me for. And so my mom took a look at that, and she told the lady essentially to go to hell. Go to
Right.
hell with that. No, he can learn just like the rest of your children. Damn that. All right.
Right.
I'm a fortunate byproduct of her saying damn that. So when
Right.
you talked about this being an adult problem, I'm fortunate that I had a mother that didn't just go with because the white lady says, oh, this is what we're recommending, and puts fancy words on paper and just goes with it. That she had enough foresight and enough fortitude to look this lady in her eye and anybody else that's in the room and say, hell no, we're not, my son's not going through that. He can learn like the other children, and he will be in the class to learn just like the other children. But think if she had not done that, if she had said,
Right.
oh, the white folks said that, and like I said, my dad was there. She could have went home and told my dad, well, the good white folks at the school said that Ron, is having trouble in class, and he's not really interacting with the other children near as much, and they recommend he goes to this class, which was this more remedial, do everything slow. But again, it was a way to, and this was mostly black kids. When I went back and looked at this was mostly black kids that were in this class, Sam. And this was a way, again, they were putting kids, stick kids on Ritalin and all this type of stuff.
Right.
Kids that they say have behavior issues and all that they label, they would stick over here, away from the population. And again, that's that drive that then takes you to, that pathway, like you said, to, through the prison system. Because the thing is, I always speak on trust and confidence. If there's trust in the system, if there's trust in myself, and I've got the confidence to learn, and that's been instilled in me, I can go do great things, right? And that's any of these kids that are out here, these young black men. When that's broken, and the system is designed to break that early. So then,
Exactly.
again, when I was talking with my math contact, if you can't understand the teacher, and the teacher doesn't understand you, and you get to kindergarten, you don't understand addition, so then you won't understand multiplication. If you don't understand multiplication, you won't understand division, and you've got this whole kind of pipeline. But then systemically, it's designed to do that, so that you lose trust and confidence, so that then they know the statistics that there's a higher percentage of you not finishing high school, right, or dropping out. And then that's a huge, they got the numbers that support, the likelihood of you ending up in one of their jails. And I'll give you the banking piece of this that a lot of people don't know, because a lot of people in their 401ks and things like that are investing in private prisons, and they don't know it. They go and they're bragging about their 401k and their portfolio, and they go work for companies that have PACs that give to political candidates that support it. And a lot of people right now in their own personal 401k who don't know what the hell they're investing in. They just know that somebody told them, or they just picked out something that they saw was
right.
Had a 1 year growth or 2 year growth, and they just selected, Sam, right? Not knowing that it's designed to fund directly that prison cycle, by helping to evolve and grow prisons to create more cells for more black boys.
That's it.
And these are Black people doing it. And
Right.
so, like you say, that awareness and that education comes into play, and then we have to work to evolve and fix the system, that systemic piece, to build the trust and confidence, in our community. Like you said, that community going down, from a holistic standpoint down to the individual, of how do we build that trust and confidence holistically, so that Black boys have the trust and confidence in themselves and in the system, and a system that believes in them, such that they can be successful in however they determine success. Right.
Right.
Like you said, like you and I said, success for us was, going to college, meeting our brides, grooming our family, growing our careers. That's not the success for everybody, nor should it be. Everybody kind of defines that within themselves. But when the system fails that, right,
Right.
overtly and intentionally, that's something that, again, it's gone on for far too long, and we have to begin working on that directly. And I'll say this, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it, that for those of us as Black, and many of us are guilty of this, because um, we've left neighborhoods, and I think there was a generation of people, and some people say boomers or whatnot. There's a generation of people that there was like the old Looney Tunes cartoons: if you can't beat them, join them. And
Mm-hmm.
so they got leery. They watched civil rights leaders be killed over speaking out, right? We go through the 60s, you go through the 70s. They got leery of that because that was their coming of age. And it's like, well, everybody that speaks up on Black issues and, is really overt about it ends up in jail, Panthers and all that type of thing, or they end up ostracized or they end up dead. And so they're speaking out in the 60s and 70s. They become 80s and 90s conservatives that are, all, let me move out here. I'll take care of mine. I'll go see mama and auntie and all them back here, but I'll take care of mine where I'm at. You know what I mean? Because let me just keep my head down. And as long as I'm getting paid every other week, and I keep my nose clean and keep my head down, I'm okay.
Right.
Meanwhile, we have these issues. And then, as long as I can speak to them behind settings, this is something I've somewhat joked about online, but I've been serious about. More people have to speak out, not behind settings, right? So there are a lot of Black folks that, and they're working jobs, they're protecting their livelihood. But I'll say this, they're big and bad talking behind settings. They make sure they go block every Jake and every Angie, right? Block them, make sure they don't see their social media, and then talk big and bad, which is different than Rosa Parks ain't blocked nobody to tell them folks, no. Dr. King, Malcolm X, none of them blocked nobody, right? Now, did that impact their lives? Yeah. If you read about Rosa Parks, tough for her to get a job after that, right? A lot of them struggle. I get that. But, as I end my tangent on that, there are a lot of people that speak on things, behind their settings to protect their livelihood from the very people that they're speaking about in a lot of cases. And so all this kind of comes in this hodgepodge of, how do we help those things that you speak of systemically when more of us speak up openly, right? And without the fear of, well, my boss at FedEx might see it and might not like what I'm saying or the stance that I take because he or she disagrees, right? And that's going to be an impact on me in the right to work state. That's an impact on my livelihood, right?
Right.
And so there's that dilemma that people have. I get it.
Yeah.
I've been there, right? However, I think that's going to be a big piece of those areas that you mentioned, is when more of us, those that are in that community, and then more of us who may not live directly in those old communities, but should still have a vested interest in that, of course, speak up. Like you're seeing some with, what we were talking about earlier, Sam, where now you're seeing white people speak up more overtly. There are a lot of that are putting out general statements, of course, right? And that somewhat can become trendy, but you're seeing more, and that's where you spoke of that awakening of, there's more white people speaking out against the injustice. Now that, certainly that you have it on video. And I'll end with this, that proximity breeds empathy. So I think younger white people have more of a proximity to this issue than, say, some of previous generations. And so that proximity breeds that empathy. Now, hopefully that empathy can lead to action.
Hopefully, yes.
That leads to results. And so that's the next step of it. So now there's an awakening because there's a proximity to it. Gen X, millennial, Generation Y, white folks are closer to it. They've had more interaction with Black folks. Then they didn't live as segmented of a life. From elementary school on, they were in post desegregation, so they were in classrooms with Black boys and Black girls. They've had them as friends, they've dated them, they've married them, whatever the case is. And so now there's a proximity. All right. And the next step is, whether it's that situation, where we talk about the overall racial injustice, or we talk about the school system, that hopefully that proximity for white folks and for Black folks that, kind of got out the game, so to speak, right, that are now brought back into it, right? The boomer that, like you say, left Memphis, went to 30 miles down the street to the gated community, worked very hard. But again, tried to segment themselves out of it, right? Now has a proximity closer to it because, again, that realization hits again that any of the people that you've mentioned that have been murdered unjustly could have been any of us, you, me, them. Your bank, I'll say this, the bank account doesn't matter. As someone that's a banker, you strip anybody of their bank account and their stock portfolio, what are we? Right. What are we?
You're individuals.
We're human beings, right? What we use to separate is, again, celebrity, bank account, stock portfolio. You strip anybody, I don't care, take anybody in the world, Jeff Bezos, Oprah, you strip them of, if they went to the bank and there's no money and there's no stock portfolio and nobody was talking about them on TV or radio, what are they? Human beings.
Humans, yeah.
Yeah. And all have a proximity to what we're talking about. So,
right.
So definitely.
So there's a lot in there, man, to unpack. I would say, you kind of talked about this whole point of, I would say, economic survivalism.
Yes.
Where we're talking about, living among white people. And then you also get into a little bit about, I would say, shrinking ourselves by not speaking out. And I think all of that is rooted in the ways that Black people navigate whiteness.
Yes.
And, where some people can speak out a little bit more overtly and some people hide themselves. It's all in how we navigate these white spaces. And we can't we can't dismiss the fact that, America is a white space.
Right.
And, Black men like you and I, like, I say, I tell folks I'm 6 feet tall, like 250 pounds. I just, I had to navigate it a little bit differently. I don't always speak with the dialect of where I'm from. I don't always bring my Mississippi Delta out. Sometimes I might have to speak, in job interview language to appease people, but it's all rooted in how I navigate and all rooted in how I survive.
Right.
But I would say that, one thing we have to do, and I think and it helps that a lot of organizations do this. A lot of organizations collect data.
Yes.
Right. And the truth is always in the data. So whether you are a large Fortune 100 company or you are a small nonprofit, there's some data that you should be collecting that tells your story.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to have someone that can look at your data through an equity-centered lens and bring that story out a little bit more. So, and that right there, when you tell stories based on the data and you tell the truth based on the data,
yes,
it offers some sort of protection. Again, we're talking about navigating, white spaces.
Exactly.
It offers protection on why we do the work that we do. And just to kind of segue for a bit, I get a lot of the time folks are like, man, you focusing on Black boys, and what about Black girls? What about Native American boys? What about Latino boys? And in the first thing I tell them, I say, look, all of those groups all have some sort of marginalization that has been heaved on them. and I'm not going to deny it.
Right.
But when I look at the data, right now, or the data from last year, or the data from the year before, or the data from the year before that, this school district does a tremendous job of marginalizing Black boys the most.
Wow.
That is why I focus on them.
Yes.
Point blank. So it's not, a lot of people, I have to clear it up. It's like, it's not because I'm Black and I'm a dude and I got 2 Black sons that I just go hard for this. It is simply looking at the data. And here's one thing I can tell you about the data. Data shows you that after you have heaved injustice and oppression on one group for so long, there's not going to be a lot of that group left. So
Right.
now we move on to the next group. Like
Mm.
that's the thing we have to look at
That's
in the
interesting.
that's the thing we have to look at in the history of America. We look at, you can look at Native American populations.
Mm-hmm.
They were systematically destroyed and killed. This was genocide. All right.
Right. Exactly.
And there's hardly any of them, they're not nearly as popular as they once were.
Right.
So when that happens, when you end up killing off a whole class of people and you want to build an empire, like, what do? Let's go and create this transatlantic slave trade and bring Black people over here. And
Mm.
that's the nature of it. So and so I would say even now, there's been so much attention being placed on our brothers and sisters south of the border. We're talking about Mexican people, right?
Yes.
So look at this. Like, so they have just straight up just decimated and killed Native Americans. And the
Mm-hmm.
ones that are left, they put them just in these oft remote parts of the country where they can't even fully live.
Mm-hmm.
Then they move on to Africans, and we're subjugated, we're enslaved, we're all these things, we're over incarcerated, and all these things, we're undereducated, and a lot of damage has been done to us as well. Let's not sit here and say that it hasn't.
Right.
And now it becomes, let's move toward Mexican populations. We don't want them crossing the border. We don't want them doing certain jobs. We're going to blame them for taking jobs. So this stuff, that's also one way that racism evolves,
Yes.
right? So I will give people that it does evolve. Like, after you've done punishing one group, you move on to the next.
Right.
And that's the reason we always got to look at history with sensitivity to data that shows us. So, like, of course, right now, Black boys is the focus. I'm trying to get to the point where we don't decimate them, and
Mm.
then they move to Latino boys.
Right.
Because if we move to Latino boys and we haven't fully solved this issue with Black boys, Latino
Mm-hmm.
boys are going to be subject to the same thing.
Right.
So again, leaning on data, that's your safety blanket. Your data will tell the story of the direction that you need to go, or a direction that you need to go.
Yeah. And Sam, speaking on data, let's get into this along the lines with what we're talking about, because something that's become near and dear to my heart, especially since the onslaught of the current pandemic, which is the digital divide. So the digital divide, of course, nationwide, but more specifically to Memphis and Shelby County. So, you and I, we have young, children. We kind of laughed a little bit about being homeschool teacher and that sort of thing. My wife's a pharmacist, so she's still going out running the clinic. I'm here, I'm working from home, not in the office. And then I've got my 3 girls, 10, 9, and 7, soon to be 8, here at the house. I served, obviously, coming from, say, early March through the end of May, as homeschool teacher. So I'm, teaching on subjects. The school's doing a great job, or as good a job as they can, of sending activities and doing, Zooms and Google Hangouts. Matter of fact, the Zoom for my youngest daughter was kind of funny. Having first graders on a Zoom for the first time was funny. Trying to get 20 kids to mute their line and, do stuff was comical to say the least. But there was a lot of frustration I could sense among the teachers with doing that. And then it really hit home for me that, wow, man, I'm fortunate. My wife and I are fortunate to be able to provide, things like a strong enough Wi-Fi for them to be able to stream video and, devices that they could use. Each one of my girls has their own kind of iPad level device that they could use to get on Hangouts and to pull up PDFs and to, get on websites and pull up the, all the different tools, that you have. And, it led me to think even further, Sam, that, again, there are many kids, and I'm really sure there's data supporting this, but there are many kids right here in our communities that don't have access to those devices and that type of Wi-Fi to be able to participate fully in that, what could evolve into this hybrid, face-to-face virtual, education process that could evolve as a result of this pandemic. Of course, none of us know what it's going to be, right? But if I don't think it's going to be completely virtual just going forward and you just abandon face-to-face school. I don't see that. But I could see a scenario, especially in the short term, next few school years, where they're kind of bringing in X number of kids into the building. There's these different schedules for classes, and then there's this requirement of being able to access school away from the school building. And we won't even get into meals and things like that. That's even a complete another conversation of the impact of nutrition as it relates to to communities and things like that. But what are your thoughts on that digital divide? I'm interested in that, again, short term and long term, kind of what you see with that, what the data, states with that, and the behavior behind the data, and then what can be done or what is being done about that digital divide, again, to make sure that there's not another layer of inequality that creeps up even further. That's this digital inequality that comes, that could have again, a significant impact on our future. So, what's kind of your thoughts there?
Right. So, just before we jump into this conversation, I talked about how racism evolves.
Yes.
And we have to look at how racism evolves in education. And so the next iteration of racism evolving, I think, is the digital divide, because that's the next place where education is going.
Yeah.
So we can always go back to the beginning where I don't want to take the credit for it, but there's this scholar by the name of Gloria Ladson Billings. I think she's a professor emeritus from the University of Wisconsin. She's like,
Okay.
in education circles, she's like the GOAT, right?
Right.
And she talks about America's educational debt. And what she does, she compares it using, we always conflate these terms, debt and deficit,
Yeah.
when we talk about what America owes, where she says that, our education debt is similar to the national debt.
Wow.
It is not a deficit. A deficit can be made up. If your leadership is savvy enough, they can close a deficit by the end of their first or second presidential term. We've seen that with Bill. We've seen that with Bill Clinton.
Right.
But the national debt is something that we started accumulating shortly after the Revolutionary War, and it's been growing. It's been growing ever since then.
Yeah.
So Gloria Ladson Billings says that our education debt is the same. It's something that we started at slavery when we told slaves they couldn't read. It continued when slaves were free and we placed them in subpar learning conditions. It continues when we place housing values on whether or not on the values of school. Like schools are funded, resource based, based on the tax base. So it continues in these different ways. So the next iteration of education evolving within this education debt has to live within the digital divide. The district has said, on different times, different occasions, that there are about 40,000 students in the district that live on less than $10,000 a year.
Wow.
Right. So we have to think about what access that lack of household income. Right now, internet, a computer, internet, Wi-Fi, all that's a luxury. It's not a utility.
Right.
If it were a utility, different housing departments and whatnot could figure out a way to subsidize it and make it possible for every family to have it. But it's a luxury. So a lot of these families that we're talking about that earn less than $10,000 a year will be without that. Now, what that shapes out to, you're talking about that's 40,000 kids. That's about 35% of your student population.
Wow.
But what we don't want to get stuck on is the ones that make less than 10,000. We want to get into uh, going even up that ladder. There's some that make less than 15,000, some that make less than 18,000, some that make less than 20,000.
Yeah.
All of them, as those numbers go up, I mean, as those incomes go up from 10,000, less than 20, or less than 10,000 to less than 20,000, we're talking about 40%, 50%, 60%. Ultimately, the district, I think, has a graphic that says that 80% of its students are economically disadvantaged according to federal standards, which
Sure.
means that a family of four making less than $24,000 a year.
Wow.
So if we're really paying attention to this is a majority Black district. I think 85% Black student population. 80% of the total number is economically disadvantaged, and so that would present a problem for a digital divide amongst Black students, amongst Black families, and it would hinder learning going forward. But again, this is the next iteration of the evolution of racism in public education. We all know that, even colleges are doing it. I took
Yeah.
like this past semester, our classes had to become online as the pandemic started to kind of run its course. As a matter of fact, right now at the University of Memphis, summer school is all online
All
right now.
online. Right. Exactly.
So even that, it makes you think about where learning has to transition and has to evolve in order for students to participate in it. But when you're talking about public education, which is mandated, when a kid is 5 years old, they have to be, when they turn 5, they have to be in some sort of educational framework or structure, whether public or private.
Right.
So education is mandated in this country. So how do we? Then it becomes, how do we mandate Wi-Fi? How do we mandate technology, computers in the home when we have to move to an online platform because of an unforeseen circumstance?
Right.
But as far as like actual digital divide numbers, I don't have those numbers. I think you could probably look at some of the local folks that kind of run those things, like Mecca Igwekwe over at Code Crew. I think
Yeah.
they can kind of put some numbers to what the digital divide looks like for
Yeah. Shout out
Memphis.
to him too, by the way.
Right, man.
Definitely.
Deep brother, man.
Yeah.
And but when we look at what we already have based on economically disadvantaged, that's 82% of your student population, we know there's going to be a digital divide because everything digital lives in the area of luxury. And I think it's a little bit tougher to come into possession of luxury when 82% of your students are economically disadvantaged.
Yeah. Yeah. No
And
doubt about it.
and real quick, what I would say on the flip side of that, this is how racism perpetuates and lives on. Get my math right. The 18% that are not economically disadvantaged, right? So you got 82% that are. So that means that 18% are not.
Right.
Those 18% that are not are more likely to be white families and probably some Asian families as well. So they will be okay. Like, so if the district were to have, just a universal, this is what we're going to do for distance learning, right?
Right.
That 18% will be just fine, right? And of course, there are some high earning Black families in that too. I don't want to dismiss that, but that
Sure.
18% will be fine. Whereas this 82%, which is like a mass of Black families, would not be. And that is how again racism kind of continues and perpetuates itself. If a model of equality were placed in instead of a model of equity were placed in.
Right.
So these are these things we always have to be cognizant of when we're talking about what we're going to provide, how we're going to do it, and how we're going to ship it out. If we're not thinking through it with this equitable mindset, we end up repeating racist practices when we think we're doing a good job.
Right. Exactly. No, it's a tremendous point, Sam. And you hit on something too that's interesting in terms of at the college level, even at the undergraduate, even graduate and beyond, that that divide can still exist. Just because we've reached post-secondary education levels doesn't mean that divide doesn't exist. I imagine right now, even at the University of Memphis, some have struggled with having access to, if you go strictly online for remote learning, having access away from the university, at home. And again, University of Memphis, more of in an urban setting university, not a college town, per se, like a lot of universities and colleges around the country. And then you've got, Black people who come from more urban, those urban areas and things like that around, that go back to situations where they don't have access to be able to get on a professor's Zoom. Right.
Right.
If you don't have the desktop with the webcam or the laptop with the webcam built into it, and you don't have, like you say, the Wi-Fi or the internet that's, even existent, much less is at a capacity that allows you to do that. And so, and even at the University of Memphis now, in one of the departments, they're struggling from an HR standpoint on providing Wi-Fi at home for workers. So for folks in certain departments that are working from home, there's this concern now from an HR standpoint is, does the university provide that? And if they provide it, if I go, I'm a more of an hourly, worker, I've got a lower, income, and I go to my boss at the University of Memphis or whoever and ask, hey, I can't afford to have Comcast or AT&T at my house. And the boss or whoever says, okay, we'll pay the $50 or $60 a month for you to have it. And then the worker down the way who maybe makes a little bit more, but it's like, well, I'm using the same internet that he or she's going to get for free. I've been paying for it. I shouldn't have to pay for it if you're paying for his, because we're using it the same. So now what about mine? Right. And if you're not going to do that for me, now I'm going to make obviously a fuss of inequality about that. So now there's this, and I think that's happening across the workforce to varying degrees, is when you've got that imbalance of access to that at home, even for adults, that are going through that, and the issues that it can create for adults who, like you say, may not can be in position to afford to have it, or the only internet that they have is on their phone, which is not capable, obviously, of doing too much remote work. You can get on a Zoom call on your phone and things like that, or a Google Hangout or Microsoft Teams. But, in terms of really doing it, having the proper device and then the proper Wi-Fi is certainly critical. So, I mean, that adds just other layers, how it, goes holistically, with the school system, and then for our youth, and then all the way up to the adult level, for sure, man. So,
and I would even add to the adult level, we also need to recognize that within those economically disadvantaged homes, a lot of the adults, a lot of the parents are hourly workers. And
yes.
so, we touched on this real briefly. You were able to stay at home and teach your girls.
Yes.
My wife and I are both working from home, and we were able to teach our kids and whatnot. So here's even what that means. It means that during the day, I was able to not do the work of my job to teach my kids, because I could wait until in the after hours and complete reports or send emails or do those other things, because our jobs possibly allow this different integration of work life. But
sure.
if you're working an hourly job, it may be a little bit more difficult to do those things. I know that you can kind of, trade out hours or trade out shifts and everything, but that's not always the possibility, because you're talking about a whole mass of hourly workers that will have to be at home during the day to help, homeschool in this digital life. And then, maybe they could work at night or transfer their shifts or whatever the case may be. But it's like, what does that look like? Would a company be willing to accommodate that? Some may, but not all would. Really depends, I think, on where you work. So there's a lot, like you say, there's connected to a parent even being able to do homeschooling during the day. When there's, these different type of work situations, salary versus hourly.
Yeah. Yep, no doubt about it. Our guest today, Sam O'Brien, Senior Director, Equity and Partnerships with SchoolSeed Foundation. Sam, let's get to a fun question real quick.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
So I like to ask guests this, and so no strings attached. I show up to you in your wife's house with $100 million cash.
How much?
$100 million.
Okay.
Yep, 100 million. I roll up Brinks trucks, come down your street. Y'all ask who's that. I pull up at your house. I say, hey, Sam O'Brien family, this is for you. There's no strings attached. I've got $100 million in cash. All right, that's yours. What would you do with that cash? And
Man,
why? If you
and
had
so
just $100 million
100 million,
equity
man.
injection, no, nothing. There ain't no loan. There's no string. You don't have to do no favors. You ain't got. It's just here you go.
Man, I'll say the first and foremost, man, and it's, this may even sound cliche, man, but I gotta give my 10% to the Lord.
There you go.
Off top.
Okay.
Like, you made the point about how you've actually prospered a little bit more during this pandemic, and I think that we have as well. I've looked at where I've spent too much, looked at the stuff we didn't need to buy, and we're
Right.
look at my account, and I'm like, hold up, was there a bill I forgot to pay?
Right.
That's the first thing. I'm like,
yeah, we did the same thing. Right.
I'm like, no, we just not eating out. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly.
But first and foremost, man, I had to give 10% to the church,
Okay.
because I think about my spiritual covering and the teachings that come from that, and even what that spiritual covering allows us to do, and the freedom it allows us to have in what we do, and just to so that 10% off top. So now I got 90 million left.
Right.
Man, I'm taking care of my family, man.
There
I'm
you
taking
go.
like immediate, my mom and dad and my in-laws,
Yeah.
because there's just I think about the whole concept of wealth building,
Mm-hmm.
and I think about the whole concept of like creating something that lasts for generations. I would immediately just take care of them. I would. My parents aren't doing bad at all. I don't want to paint this erroneous picture,
Right.
but
Right.
I move them out of the house that they're in, and just it's something a lot nicer. The house that they're in, they raised 3 boys. They lived a pretty good middle class black life. They had no excuses. But
Right.
I just move them out of it, because it's like, I just want y'all to have something a little bit better.
Yeah.
But man, I probably just look at all the different ways that I can make the money stretch over 2, 3, and 4 generations.
There
So
you go.
whether that looks like irrevocable trusts or CDs, or whatever I'd have to do to make it stretch over those 2, 3 generations, I'd make it. That's the move I make. But I probably also have like a long conversation about whether or not I return to work. I mean, because
Right.
and the thing is, I
Right.
like what I do, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. I like my job. I like what I'm able to do and what I'm able to build. So that's where the conversation will come from. It's like, man, I
Yeah.
still want to be on these. I want to be on these front lines in the trenches, making this work happen. But
Yeah.
Ron just dropped off 100 million, so I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, there'd be a lot. There's a lot of frontline work you could do with 90 million. That's for sure.
Right.
There's a lot of things you could organize and kind of make move, to say the least, man. So definitely dig that. Sam, as we kind of wrap up, man, because we've had a great conversation. This has been extremely rich content, rich dialogue. For those that are just out there that are listening to this podcast, they're watching it on YouTube, they've heard our conversation, they learn more about you. What are just 1 or 2 best practices that have aided you in your success that you think would help others? I always think, with successful people, there's something innate within them that even when they face obstacles, and listen, I know we haven't gotten into a lot of personal things with you in terms of obstacles you faced, and obviously an inherent systemic racism that you faced and had to endure, just to say the least, man. But, if you had 1 or 2 things that have worked well for you that you'd like to share with our audience, man, what would those things be?
I'll say 1 or 2 things, man. One, I would say always have a partner by your side that can offer you wise counsel.
Mhm.
I can sit here and say that, for me, that's my wife.
Yeah.
And there have been so many times where I probably would have just done something stupid on my own.
Yeah.
But and being my wife, she's also an accountability partner, and she can talk me off that ledge, and saying you shouldn't do this because X, Y, and Z. So for some people, that may come in the form of a best friend. It may come in the form of like your favorite cousin from childhood, but definitely one thing: keep you an accountability partner that's gonna call you out on your mess.
Yes.
We a lot of times we build these echo chambers, and people agree with us, and we just make bad decisions. But get you an accountability partner that's able to call you out on your mess, that knows you as well as you know yourself.
Yes.
That's one thing. The other thing, man, I would say, in whatever job you do, no matter what it is, because I've had some horrible jobs and I've had some good jobs.
Yeah.
Whatever job you do, learn something from it.
Yeah.
Learn something at a small level, and learn something at a larger level.
Yeah.
Learn something from it. I would, real quick, I would say, like, I used to be a collections manager for a furniture rental company.
Yeah.
It's really just, I was a repo man. I would go out to people's houses and repossess their big screen TVs and couches and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's the job I took when I was in grad school and I was broke. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right. Right.
So,
Right.
and I knew I wasn't gonna retire from it. I knew I wasn't gonna. I thought I was gonna be there 6 months. I ended up being there almost 2 years.
Yeah.
But what I learned from it, I actually learned what poverty looked like,
Mm.
right? Because when I took the job, I'm thinking that I'm gonna go repossess TVs from deadbeats who can't pay their bill, right?
Right. Right.
It ended up, there were families who were making decisions. Like, I still give this example. There was this lady who rented a refrigerator from us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she used the refrigerator to keep her medicine cold because she was like taking insulin and some other
Right.
things
Of
like that.
course.
And so she had to juggle between paying the rent on the refrigerator and paying to pay for her medicine.
Wow.
And so if I took her refrigerator, yes, she would have money for her medicine, but she wouldn't have anything to put the medicine in.
Right.
So I'm sitting there, I was like, man, this is what poverty looks like. And this was not like some, we always talk about, this is not some able-bodied person that could get out there and work. This was like an elderly lady who was on a fixed income.
Right. Exactly.
And so I'm sitting here thinking, the human side of me is like, you just keep this refrigerator and I'll just keep checking back when you have the money. And then the company side of me is like, if I don't repossess this refrigerator, and my boss is going to come down on me. So I got a
Mm-hmm.
decision to make. So you learn about people, you learn about communities, you learn about poverty, and some of the most, I would say, just unbelievable situations. Again,
Wow.
I was just trying to make money because I was a broke grad student, but I ended up learning about how communities are built and why some people live on this side of town versus that side of town. So it's
Right.
always learn from whatever job you have, good or bad. Always learn.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And those are great best practices, man. And I am with that proximity connects you to the empathy. And so you had a proximity directly in that job that you had in grad school that I'm sure has, propelled you through your career and will continue to do so, man. So, man, Sam O'Brien, I can't thank you enough, brother, for, one, taking time to be here with the MYB community on the podcast. Two, the work that you and your team are doing, some be it, behind the scenes in a lot of ways to, again, help amplify the voices specifically of young Black men and Black boys in this community, and continue to lead the charge to create evolved systems that, uh, benefit Black boys and
Right.
help and the connection that does for our whole society, man. So, on behalf of the minding your business community, man, I thank you for that, man. Safety to you and your family, to your wife and to your children, man. Just wish you safety and blessings, brother. Going forward, love to remain connected with you. And love to learn more about how to inspire, for myself and others to get even more involved with some of the efforts specifically around our school system, and again how we edify communities by edifying young Black boys. So thank you, man. Continue to be safe, and man, I really appreciate it.
Man, same thing, man. Take care of your folks, take care of your wife and your kids, and continue to be safe yourself.
Yep, no doubt about it, man. Sam O'Brien, our guest today, Senior Director, Equity and Partnerships with SchoolSeed Foundation. You look in the show notes, MYB, you'll see a link to the foundation. You can learn more about that and how to be able to connect with Sam. And if you reach out to Sam and connect with him, let him know that you heard him right here on the Minding Your Business podcast. Subscribe to the podcast, 5-star on Apple. Allows us to continue to share great content and great guests like you had today with more people so that we can provide insight and educate and inform more of us, not just so we know and hoard information, but so then we can be inspired and influenced to take action for social good and social good for our communities. So I definitely want to put that out there. The MYBpodcast.com is where you can go to get more exclusive content, as well as listen to more episodes of the Minding Your Business podcast. In the show notes, don't forget, for everyone that's been a guest, obviously on the Minding Your Business podcast over the years, I'm creating a database, an online directory for all businesses. So Sam will be a part of that with his organization as well as others. That's going to be free to all guests. So all show guests, you'll be able to have a link. I'm actually having a developer build this now, a Black developer who does a tremendous job. It's actually a man and woman team. They're putting it together as we speak. I've got a call with them this afternoon to provide some more insight on some questions they've asked me. But we're building this directory. It'll be free for show guests, and they'll have a link to their episode as well as a link to how to connect with them and a small little blurb about kind of what they do. So that will be on the website probably within the next couple of weeks. If you want to be a part of that, there will be a link for a form in the show notes. Complete that form and we can have you included. I'm doing this on a limited basis because once that's over with and the directory is up, you'll be able to join the directory for just a fee of $250 annually or $20 a month. So $20 a month should be worth it for you to promote your business or your organization. If that's not, you probably need to have another conversation with yourself in regards to your business. But for $20 a month, you'll be part of this directory. Keep in mind, I'm a member of over 11 state banking associations. They're tied into state capitals. That email with the link to this directory will go out weekly to not just bankers, but all their vendors and everybody they do business with. You heard Sam and I talk earlier about banking. These are folks that you want to know about your business and about your organization. Let me tell you that. They're folks that you want to have their eyes on your business so that they can patronize it. This is not just so for them to scroll and look and say, oh, that's nice. This is something where they're encouraged to engage you and do business. So you want your business out there, complete that link in the show notes, and we can get you a part of that directory. Brandyourpod.com. So BrandPod, I during this pandemic, I had the opportunity to work with two banks up in the Michigan area to help them launch podcasts that will be launching here in the next few weeks. Your audience is not all on your social media timeline. So unless you're adding, loads of people every day to your Facebook, your Instagram, and that sort of thing, you're kind of sharing messages to the same people. So you're singing a lot to the choir, which is fine. However, if you want to continue to expand your business, MYB, you need to be able to reach new audiences. There's a whole audience out there that wants to hear from you. I will help you do that and help you monetize your podcast. If I can do it, you can do it. Brandyourpod.com. Go there, schedule a time. Let's talk about your podcast idea. Now's a great time to do it. There's ever was a time to launch your podcast. Now is the time to do it. I'll tell you that I grossly underestimated how the podcast would be a positive influence for my business, and it's kind of served as a digital resume, so to speak. So now, although I was a 17-year banker, I have people that recognize me more for this podcast than my banking career. And so this is a great way for you to, again, connect, tell your story, own your narrative. Because again, when you post on social media, you forgot that when you those terms and conditions you didn't read for Facebook, That's their real estate. Facebook's a real estate company, right? Instagram's a real estate company. They have digital real estate. You get the space for free, they sell it, right? So it's digital real estate. They own it. They own everything you post on it. With your podcast on your platform, you own it. That's the difference. All right. So that's the difference between going Facebook Live and having your own podcast. All right. It takes time to build. Yes. It's not the immediate gratification that you'll get with Facebook Live. However, it'll be yours and you will be able to grow your audience. So let me help you do that at brandyourpod.com. Listen, go be great. Remember, there's 3 things we all have in common. We all want to be better for ourselves. We want to be better for our community. We want to be better for our families. So go be great for those areas. And if you do that, we all collectively will be just that much better. Champ Ron, Minding Your Business podcast.